Welcome to The Beginning, the podcast that uncovers the incredible stories of pro anglers, the challenges, the triumphs, and the pivotal moments that shaped their journeys to the top. At the helm of today's episode is your host, Jordan Werner. Jordan brings his passion for the sport and curiosity about what makes champions to every episode. And today, he's sitting down with pro angler Drew Gill, known for his relentless drive, unmatched dedication, and an ever-expanding list of accomplishments. Get ready for an inspiring dive into Drew's story, his challenges, his victories, and the moments that defined his path. This is The Beginning. Let's get started.
All right, sweet. So we got Drew Gill here today. What's going on, Drew?
Dude, I'm just living. I'm preparing, getting everything ready to hit the road. I'm headed to Texas tomorrow.
There you go.
Conroe practice doesn't start until Monday, but so this dates this episode. We're here at the end of January, and it's about time to go, man. And once I hit the road, I'll be gone until the middle of March. So it's been a short off season for me for sure. Me and Marshall Robinson fished the last team series that anybody could fish this season, which was the week before Thanksgiving. So it's been 2 months, 2 months off, and it's back at it. So I'm ready to go. I'm excited. But it's been a hectic rush the last few days for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. I leave for my first little trail. I fished the one bass stuff out here at
Gotcha.
West, so I'm leaving to Shasta next week.
Nice, dude. There's so many fisheries out there like that are bucket list fisheries that are just such a major inconvenience for anyone out east to get to. But it's definitely on my list.
Yeah, trip to Clear Lake for you. You'd love Clear Lake.
Yeah, that place is incredible, and the weights are tremendous. I mean, that place has really been putting it out over the last few years for sure.
Yeah, it's an incredible lake. But yeah, so what we're going to do here today, we're going to ask you a few questions and just dive into your story. And yeah, so let's get after it with number one. What was your earliest memory of fishing and who inspired you to pick up a rod for the first time?
One of my earliest fishing memories, and this one's bass fishing centric. One of my earliest bass fishing memories, I think I was between 6 to 8 years old, and I remember picking up a buzzbait for the first time, and it was actually it was just on a button push, Zebco 33 style rod, but I remember throwing it out there, and I was just throwing it over the middle of this pond, and one came up and ate it, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. Bass fishing was, obviously most of us start out with throwing a bobber and a worm or something of that nature. And when the first time I remember catching one on a buzzbait was so impactful to me, just because it's like, it was the fun of tricking a bass into falling for an artificial lure. And that was something that was super incredible to me, and definitely, started me on the path toward where I am now. But at that time it was just, man, I love catching fish. It was super fun. It was something, around here in Illinois, it was something that almost became a seasonal thing because, a few months out of the year we just couldn't fish. So it was something I looked forward to every spring and summer for the trees start blooming, for us to get back on the water. And that was something that I really enjoyed as a child. And, my dad was the biggest reason that I got into bass fishing. I mean, he made sure I was on the water. My grandpa sold him his old aluminum boat. It's a 1970 something Fisher aluminum, and he bought it for $2 from my grandpa, with the advice that a boat is just a hole in the water to throw your money into. And it was the greatest $2 investment I think my dad's ever made. And we fished out of that aluminum, gosh, my whole childhood. Heck, the last time I was in that boat was just a couple months ago. We've still got it to this day, got a 25 horse on it, and that thing just ignited my spark for going and going fishing as often as I could. And my dad was a big reason for that.
That's awesome. That's super cool. But on a buzzbait, that's crazy.
Yeah, dude. It was. I still remember it was like it wasn't a standard flat blade buzzbait. It was one of the 3-blade buzzbaits, and I was just winding it, and I remember seeing something boil behind it. And I was like, what in the world? I must have run it over the back of a turtle or something. And then one came up and ate it. And it was on I'm sure it was on 4-pound Cajun line or something like that. So you're pulling all that, button push drag where it's and you're reeling against the drag with that stupid little single handle. And I remember how, we still got a photo of that fish to this day. I just saw it the other day. So it's definitely fresh in my mind too.
Was it at least a giant one?
It was about a pound and a half. It was
Oh.
not a giant one. but it was sentimental nonetheless.
That's awesome. That's a great way to get the spark.
For sure, man. Top water is such a tremendous way to get anyone addicted to bass fishing because it's so engaging, and it's one of those things where you're just anticipating it at any moment, because I think there's a disconnect in our minds when we throw a bait out there and it breaks the surface and sinks down. I think especially if we're not looking at it on scope, there's such a disconnect in our minds that bait even still exists. Yes, we know it exists practically speaking, but you don't see it the entire time you're trying to catch a bass all day long when you're throwing something subsurface. So it's almost as if you're just throwing a line out there and waiting for that moment when a fish notifies you it's on the end of the line. Nothing is happening in between. And so topwater is a really easy way for people to get into it, because it bridges that gap that your mind logically has, which is that you just throw out there and your brain kind of forgets that that bait's still on there doing something that you could see with your eyes if you were down there, but you're not. And so with topwater, you are visually engaging with it the whole time, which gets you really in the zone of like understanding, okay, every little rod movement, every change in the speed of my reel, all of these little nuanced things, they do matter, because that bait is interacting with all of the things I'm trying to do with it. And it's something that definitely prepares us for other types of bass fishing. So when I'm trying to get somebody into fishing, topwater is one of the things I lean on for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's super cool. When was the first time you ever fished a tournament? Like the first derb, anything?
So, okay, this is technically the second time I ever fished tournament. The first tournament I ever fished was a club tournament where I was attempting to catch a crappie at the same time my dad was bass fishing it when I was like 6 years old. So that one I'm gonna push that one aside. My first tournament experience after a long time was me and my dad took up fishing a team trail locally when I was either 13 or 14. Was my first time like actually doing the thing with tournament fishing, and we fished all of the tournaments on our USA Bassin division right by the house. And I remember the first tournament we fished, it was freezing cold. They start their season in March every year, which for us generally means the water's going to be high 30s, low mid 40s, and it's going to be cold. It snowed, it sleeted, it was nasty conditions. We had 2 keepers all day long. It was a brutal tournament, but I remember just going out there and like me and my dad fished for 2 hours the evening before the tournament, just to we hadn't been out there all year, and just see if we couldn't get in touch with what was going on. And I just remember like really enjoying the experience of showing up to the lake and going, okay, not just am I showing up to just, oh, let's go catch a fish or two and try and have a good time. Let's show up and let's try to A, locate the bass, and B, find the best way to catch them in a manner that no one else is capable of doing. Let's go approach this in a way that we're trying to do something special. We're trying to take those special fishing experiences that you have, those awesome days on the water that you get to chase when you're in fun fishing mode, and let's translate that to a tournament. And let's take those days that when we're starting out are just kind of chance days or random days where it's just special and you don't really know why, and let's try and lasso that and why that happened, and let's try to understand it, and let's try to make it where those special days, I'm going to use the term, aren't so special anymore, because they're not so unique or uncommon anymore. They're still just as special, but they're not so rare, because, let's lasso it and let's find a way to make those special days happen on command when we need them to happen. Let's find a way to take those awesome days on the water and make it manufacturable enough where I can just plug that into my tournament game. And whenever I need to go fish a tournament, I can take it and go, okay, these are the conditions, this is what I should be doing, and let's plug that concept of this is what I do in this scenario to create a good fishing experience, and let's plug that right into the tournament, because ultimately that's what you need to have to do well in an event. And so to go to that first tournament and like discover, okay, this is the strategy you got to go for. You got to go out here and try and harness that special day regardless of the conditions. And we didn't do it successfully that first time, but I knew that capability was there. and it was something that I chased after that for sure. And that whole first season of tournament fishing was one of the most fun series of bass fishing I've ever had, and we were doing it for tournaments where if you won, you made $300. Like, it was low stakes, low risk, but man, was it a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's super cool. I remember fishing my first tournament. I was probably 13 years old, and we have a little lake right next to my house. It's 2 minutes away. It's called Sand Hollow.
Gotcha.
And it was a night tournament. I was falling asleep in the back of the boat, fishing until 3 a.m. But those tournaments, those are crucial to like start you going.
For sure, man. Like, bass fishing is something it's incredibly challenging, and it's incredibly expensive. I mean, it's a hard thing to break into. And so those first experiences that really get you addicted to it are extremely essential for you to keep going, even when, you have a couple tournaments in a row that don't go your way, or even when, you have your fourth boat problem in a year. I had a 2001 boat forever. Leading in, I even fished the first part of the invitational season last year, or I say last year, 2023 out of it. And that boat, I mean, are you going to keep going whenever you have your water pump go out, or all your compartment lids cave in, or your trolling motor foot pedal board goes out, whatever? Are those things going to crush you where you're like, this isn't for me anymore? Or do you love it enough that you're going to keep pushing through and getting invested in it from a sense that's not related to, oh, I just went out there and I just smoked them. I can only smoke them forever or else I'll hate this. Or from a sense that, I went out there and had some adversity, and maybe things didn't go my way in terms of conditions or whatever was going on. Maybe it was boat issues, whatever. But I was able to go out there, have a good time, enjoy myself, and find a way to try and succeed regardless. And I think if you don't get that base level addiction where you're like, I do this because I love it and because I want to beat it, you do it because you want to be better than you were yesterday. If you don't get that base love for it, you're not going to persevere through the adversity.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there ever a time you thought about giving up, and what brought you back into it to keep going?
Man, I don't think there was ever a time where I was like, I'm truly going to give up on this. Like, I'm just going to, wash my hands of bass fishing and set it aside and be done. But there was definitely a time, multiple times, where I doubted, like, is this tournament thing for me? Where I was like, is this something that I really want to wrap up a lot of time, attention, and care on? Because, it'll break your heart, especially early on. With time, those failures and those poor tournaments are going to come less often. And when they do come, you're going to be a little bit more mentally prepared to deal with it. But early on, man, it's hard because you go out there and a lot of us, especially by the time we take up tournament fishing, to take up tournament fishing at a high level or at a competitive level, bare minimum, you got to be able to drive your own vehicle, which means you got to be 16 years old. So basically, anything up until 16 is you're getting drugged by your parents to it, or it's fairly low stakes. So it's something you really can't get emotionally involved with enough to let it truly like shake you to your core. But when you get over 16, you get to, the end of your high school fishing career, you get to college fishing or start stepping into, your bigger local and regional tournaments, your BFLs or your big regional trails, or even to Toyotas and Opens and things like that. Like, that's where people start getting really wrapped up in it. And that's when you start getting really involved with it, expense wise and time wise. And so that's kind of the point where the rubber meets the road, and it's also kind of the point where, when you're 16, the latter part of high school, if you're competitive, if you play sports, whatever, that's kind of the get real with yourself period, where it's either, do I get real with myself and accept that these are my last years playing this sport, or do I get real and go, okay, let's lock in, let's try and make this something that I translate into college or beyond. If it's an individual sport like golf, do I, try and pursue local tournaments, whatever. That's kind of the time where people start dropping some of their childhood sports or hobbies or things like that. And it's a lot of times where, they're dropping something that they've been involved with for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, where their whole childhood has been kind of wrapped up in this activity, and they've likely seen a lot of success with it. They likely understand it. For me, it was baseball. I played baseball from the age of 8 to the age of 16. And I felt like I understood it really well. I had a lot of successes with it, whether it was travel, whether it was, school or little league affiliated teams, whatever. All those things, we had some success with it. Would travel around and play, and so I felt like I understood baseball. I felt like it was something that I could go out there and not feel like I was uncomfortable or surprised by something that occurred or caught off guard. I felt like it was truly within my grasp. And then I transitioned to bass fishing, and it was a whole new world. It's a whole new experience where you truly, when you step into it, until you start having those experiences, you don't know a whole lot. And so it's kind of uncomfortable at the beginning because you make that transition from something that you understood very well and felt like you were very comfortable around to something you don't understand or are comfortable with at all. And it's a huge, huge jump. So I think it's something where, in that age range, it's a hard transition, and it's something that can make you feel a little bit downcast at first because you realize how much you don't know when you start learning. When you very first start, you just love it because you're learning things. But the more you learn, the more you realize, why did this happen? Because I see this happen over and over and over again. Why did it happen? And it's good that you learned that happens every time, whatever weather occurs, or you're fishing for a certain species in a certain type of water clarity, whatever. It's good that you recognize that happening. That's a great thing. But when you recognize that happening, it triggers your brain to go, why did that happen? And then you realize you don't know. And it kind of spooks you a little bit. And it's something that I think early on, it's easy to get downtrodden with what you don't know. But oftentimes you realize what you don't know because of what you do know. And it's something that kind of comes hand in hand with learning, because as you learn, you realize there's more that you want to know that you just don't. And I think that's something that's pretty essential to the learning process, and something you kind of embrace. So I had moments where I wasn't sure if the tournament thing was for me, or if it was the direction that I should go, because I was so concerned about things that I didn't know at the time, or that I hadn't learned or seen or experienced. But it's something that I think is a good indicator that you are learning and that you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Like every professional guy I've talked to, they've started with baseball. Everybody's that I've talked to play baseball. I played baseball from like 8 years old to like 2 years ago.
Yep.
But like every bass fisherman I talked to, they played baseball and then they stopped and they started fishing.
I think it's kind of a natural transition too. Like a lot, I mean, it's a very popular team sport with demographics that are very popular with bass fishing. In terms of regionally in the country, baseball is also very popular in those regions, and it's also, I mean, realistically, um, being that it's a male-dominated sport, and generally it's going to be people from the Midwest or the Southeast is most of the country. You got your Western contingent too. But it's baseball places, and baseball is a sport that, I mean, maybe quarter third of the population, of the male population that's around our age is going to have at least invested some time into early on. But I think it's one that's definitely very prevalent with bass fishing, and I don't know where that connection draws entirely. I think part of it too is like baseball in opposition to football and basketball a little bit. Um, Football and basketball most of the time are going to occur, especially football is going to occur with a school affiliation. And so you're not doing that nearly as independently. You're probably not going to do it in a travel sense. You might go and learn or work out with, or strategize with somebody you hire to give you lessons, what have you. But it's not, baseball's a little bit more independent, which means it generally requires, with travels baseball, it's going to require a little bit more travel. It's pretty expensive at a younger age, at an earlier age than most other team sports. And so it's something where I think it's a nice little step in the door to how expensive bass fishing gets, because you get used to taking on that heavy expense and that fairly extensive travel on your own early on. It's just your own venture. When you're 14 years old playing baseball, you are a third baseman and you're going to go try and find the best place for you to go play, whether it be in your region or a little bit outside of it. And it's something that I think with all the equipment and things like that, I think it prepares you pretty well to take on the expenses of bass fishing. And the other thing is, I think, I don't know, but I feel like the camaraderie, teamwork aspects of football and basketball kind of make it where people want to be involved with it all the way until they're done with high school. And by the time you get out of high school, if you're not already hooked on bass fishing by then, it's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb for sure. And I think baseball people kind of, because of it is a team sport, but it's a more individual team sport. As long as the individuals take care of their job, it doesn't really, it affects the outcome of the game, regardless of whether the people around them do it either. As long as people can keep taking care of their job. In football or basketball, if you got a weak link on the court or on the field, chances are it's going to ruin the entire team's chances of winning the game. If I go 4 for 4 and I hit a home run, I have 2 doubles and a single, chances are I'm carrying a big weight of why we won the game. If you got good pitching and you've got a couple people that go up and hit well, chances are you're going to have a good opportunity to win, regardless of whether the rest of the team does their job at the plate. And so due to that little bit more individual nature, I think people are a little bit less likely to finish their baseball career at their senior year of high school unless they really love it. And so they kind of start expanding a little bit earlier than people that play other team sports. And this has gone off on a total side tangent, but I think there's some correlations to be drawn there personality wise.
Yeah. What is your biggest achievement, you think, so far in your career with bass fishing?
Oh, man. I mean, I don't know. I've got a couple that are very significant to me, very, very important. That recent team series win was super fun. It's something that's really unique and like special to me because it's such a unique tournament. You only get 2 opportunities a year to ever fish one, and you got to qualify just to be there, in either by being in the top whatever in points or getting picked by someone else. But you only ever have 2 opportunities a year to do it, and there's no practice, no info. You're fishing against a field of anglers. Some of them might have local knowledge on fishing. That means so much when you have no information, but you're really not prepared. And you just kind of show up fresh and hit the body of water without any practice and try and get in tune and go have a good time right off the bat. And it's a different experience for sure. So that one's significant. But I'm going to be honest, like my proudest achievement is my Bass Pro Tour win on the Chowan River. That one's really significant to me. Obviously, my invitational win at Rayburn's, significant to me. And I won Plains Division AOI and Toyota Series, which was very significant because that was my first true like accolade I ever got. But that win at the Chowan was huge. I had a couple top 10s up to that point. I had proven to myself that, maybe it was possible. But just being point blank, I mean, with the quality of that field, until you do it, you're never going to convince yourself, man, I can go out there in a field that consists of, Michael Neal and Matt Becker and Connell and Wheeler and Alton Jones Jr. and Ott and Justin Lucas and Spencer, and the list goes on, you name it, and truly believe that in a given tournament that you can beat all of them in one tournament. It's really hard to convince yourself that you're ever going to be capable of being better than every single one of them in a single tournament until you go and do it. And that tournament was both really sentimental to me and like it's a culmination. I mean, it's a major tour win. It's something that was really significant in that sense, but it really what it meant to me was I am capable of being better. I am capable on a given week of tournament bass fishing, that I'm able to show up to a fishery. That was one that I'd never been to, and break it down, figure it out, and fish against that heavy of a field of competitors and be successful enough to beat all of them at once. And that was something that, like, once I experienced that, I believed, okay, this is possible. Let's try and do it again. And so that's obviously a big goal of mine this year is I want to have the chance to win one again. It's hard to do. You got to set yourself up the right way and put yourself in the position for it to happen. A lot, really. I had, I think before my first win, I had 11 or 12 top 10s before I ever won a tournament. And it's something you got to put yourself in the right position a lot. but after experiencing it happen, I think it's something that I'm a little bit more comfortable with recreating at this point, and it's something that I'm looking forward to trying all year.
Yeah, that's super cool. It was super cool to watch you win that Bass Pro Tour win from out here and stuff. It was super cool to watch that. A bunch of my buddies over here watching it.
That's awesome, man.
What's one thing you can tell us high school anglers to do just to wrap our heads around the sport more and grow as anglers? And
for the high school crowd, one of the biggest things that I would say is, obviously, I mean, you guys are no stranger to it. Obviously, as you go up in the levels, the big buzzwords are like, oh, are people getting information? Are they hiring guides? All of this concept, and you guys are no strangers to it. I mean, it happens in high school tournaments too, and at the lower levels, and it's not a foreign concept there either. Either people are buying info, they're getting guides, their dads are going out and practicing for them during the week while they're at school for a week long for a tournament that's got a $200 payout, and like realistically, the thing you need to wrap your head around as early as possible is that if you want to be competitive and you want to love this, not just be a part of it, but you want to truly enjoy it later on, especially when you do succeed, do it yourself. Like, learn how to go out, break a fishery down, and regardless of your successful level early on, maybe you get trouts for a while. It's just part of it. Go out there and learn how to do the process on your own. Not meaning you can't go learn from an older gentleman in your bass fishing club on the weekends and go out and go fishing with him somewhere. Like, that stuff's great. I'm talking about specifically getting information pertaining to a specific tournament that you are about to fish a few days after now or whatever, and trying to solicit spots, areas, or specific baits about a specific fishery, and like going out and spending a bunch of money or a bunch of time trying to solicit all that information from various sources. Don't do it. Just invest yourself in learning the process, learning what happens in certain situations, learning your contour mapping, learning how weather affects bass at different times of year. Learn the process, learn the big picture. If you understand it at a big picture level, why bass do what they do, where do they go to do those things, you will be able to recreate that success everywhere you go. And if you ingrain early the process of soliciting information about the tournament that you're at or purchasing it, and you make that part of your process to success, then you can't, once you've woven that in, I mean, it's not like I can pick up my braided line. I know there's 8 strands in it, but it's not like I can pick one strand and start successfully unraveling it from the braid and my braid still be braid. It's going to be destroyed. Once you weave that into your tournament process, you can't unweave that very easily, because you're going to have to replace it with something. You're going to have to replace it with some level of understanding or learning that is capable of replacing that strand. And once you put that strand in there, it's really hard to ever grasp that on your own, because you didn't go out there and successfully obtain that information through your own process. But once you do it, it becomes extremely repeatable, meaning once you understand, you can go to any fishery at any time and have a high likelihood of successfully figuring out what's going on and repeating it. And it's something that's truly mobile. You can take it with you anywhere, and it's something that is going to give you a great level of personal satisfaction, and it's going to make it where you really enjoy it later on, because you're not, I don't have to sit around before a tournament, regardless of BPT events, because we can't get any info for those whatsoever. But I don't have to sit around before I go to an Invitational or a Toyota and sit down and go through my contacts list, figuring out who all I know from that fishery and calling everyone I know about it, and getting all the dots that I can, and overloading my laptop with SD cards of waypoints and things of that nature that I'm accruing over time, because I'm wasting 30 hours before every tournament trying to get information on the fishery. Go out there and learn how to do the process yourself, and you're going to cut all that time out of your process, and it's going to make it a lot more enjoyable, and it's going to make it where you feel like when you don't have practice or when you don't have time to prepare, that you can show up to any tournament at any given time, and with just a little bit of practice time, say you've got a day, half a day, or nothing at all, and feel confident that you can go out there and break it down efficiently. So mastering your own process, whatever that looks like, mastering your own process of breaking things down is the most important thing to ingrain in your fishing process early on. Don't get caught up in whether you're finishing first, second, or dead last in your first year or two of competitive bass fishing. If that's in high school, if that's early in tournament fishing, heck, it doesn't matter if you get into it when you're 40 in your first year or two. Like, it's the same thing for everybody. In your first year or two of competitive fishing, don't get caught up in results. Go out there and try and learn how to catch a bass. And then once you do that, try to repeat it. And just do that every time you get on the water. And I promise you, after a period of time of doing that, you will start refining those skills to a point where you're going to be better than the information. You're going to be better than what the locals say to do. You are going to be better. And if you can go out there and repeat better, you're going to enjoy it a whole lot more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, just to figure it out on your own and learn how to use your graphs and put a lot of time in on the water.
For sure, man. For sure.
Yeah, that's what I've always been told. Just more time you put on the water, more you grow as an angler.
Yeah, especially pointed time on the water, like time on the water where you go out and you're investing it, going, I'm gonna go out here today, and not only I'm not gonna go out here and try and just do what I've always done or do what I like to do. Although what you've always done or what you like to do might be the best in that scenario. If it is, then you do that. But go out every day on the water saying, I'm gonna go out here and try and have a better day than anyone else's. You look around the boat ramp before you step on your boat and you see, oh, there's 18 trucks in the parking lot. Today I'm going to go out and I'm going to try and have a better day than all of them. I don't care what they're doing. I don't care where they're doing it. Today I'm going to go out and I'm going to find a way to catch more than what's expected. You know what tournament weights are in that lake? Try and find a way to, okay, say normal tournament weight is 19 pounds to win. So that's just shy of, 5 4-pounders. Go out there and you generate a 4.5 pound bite in the first hour of your day of fishing. Okay, how do I generate another one? How do I generate another one? And over time, let's say on your home fishery, on average, over a 3-day span, you catch 4 fish over 4 pounds. Okay? So in that 3-day span, you caught 4 fish over 4 pounds. Let's just use a 12-hour day, for example. It's 36 hours. That is 1 4-pounder every 9 hours by that math. Eventually, over time, as you go out and you refine your process, you learn what doesn't work. You learn where it doesn't work. You learn in what conditions they don't work. You're gonna start refining those options and those possibilities down to one narrow channel of thought. And it's gonna make it where it's not 1 4-pounder every 9 hours. It's 1 4-pounder every 8.5 hours. It's gonna be 1 4-pounder every 6 hours, and then you might get to a point where in a single day you can go out and effectively catch 5 fish in that grade in an 8-hour span in a tournament day. And you've refined it to the point that you're fast enough with your decision-making process. You're effective enough at your execution. You're effective enough at your bait selection that you've narrowed your window of time that it takes you to generate that bite enough that you can recreate that span of time, whether that be an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours, enough in a compact space that you can go out and effectively compete in a tournament. And really, that's what we all want to do. I mean, we all want to narrow the amount of time between bites. That's what it's all about. It's like, if we can narrow the time in between bites, we're increasing the number of fish we're going to catch in a day, which is going to increase the number of fish we catch over a week, a month, a year. And with every fish catch, you learn something. So if you exponentially increase your number of fish catches, you're going to learn at an exponentially faster rate. And it's something where, as you just narrow that time, just make it your goal. If you want to go out and do the math, you can sit down and calculate, keep track of every 3+ pounder you catch, every 4+ pounder you catch all year long. Keep track of every hour you fished all year long. And over the year, month by month, or every 3 months, just sit down and calculate the amount of time you fished to the amount of 3 pounders, 4 pounders, 5 pounders, whatever your goal is, your target weight is, and figure out how many hours you had to invest fishing to catch that 1 3-pounder or that 1 4-pounder or that 1 5-pounder, and see over time, is that time narrowing? Am I investing less time to seeing more results? And obviously, by the end of the year, you're going to have, these segments of the year and how long it took you to generate X number of bites in whatever your target range is for your home lakes or whatever. And you're going to have this the sheet of information that shows you, okay, this is what I did. You go the next year, you keep the same thing. And over time, over 2, 3, 4 years, you're going to build a knowledge base that's extremely, elaborate, that's going to show you, okay, I have gotten measurably better from 2018 to 2019, 2020 to 2021. I went from, in this segment of the year, let's say it's January, February. In January and February, I went from it taking me 12 hours to generate 1 4-pound bite. For me, my target weight in generating bites is kind of 4 is my range. Okay, from 2018, it took me 12 hours to generate 1 4-pound bite. In 2019, I went to 9.8 hours to generate 1 4-pound bite. In 2020, that same time of year, January, February, it took me 6 hours to generate 1 4-pound bite. And then in 2021, it took me 3.8 hours to generate 1 4-pound bite. Okay, so as you narrow that gap, you are seeing how measurably better you are than you used to be. That is the best way of calculating that. And I think keeping bass fishing measurable and putting it in objective senses like numbers is extremely important.
That makes a lot of sense. Just like, because a lot of these lakes out here, is like your average is like 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, and I'm starting to finally figure out how to upgrade my bites using my live scope and looking for the right stuff, the right depth, and all of that. Find the bait and know what to throw at them and all of that, the right scenarios. And
Yeah, dude, it's process, but I mean, with that concept, your target weight can be whatever you want it to be. If on your fisheries, let's say your home fishery is the Delaware River, and a 2.5 pounder's a big one, whatever you need to have, basically for determining a target weight in that concept, like whatever it takes 5 of to win. Meaning, if it is 12 pounds, 12.5 pounds, it's winning. That's 5 2.5 pounders. If it's 15 pounds, that's 5 3-pounders. If it's 20, it's 5 4-pounders. If it's 25, it's 5 5-pounders. Whatever that weight is that it requires 5 of to win, on most of your lakes, most of the time, your average winning weight. That's kind of what I'm going to set my target weight at, and I'm gonna chip away over time and just figure out, how long does it take me to generate that bite, and how many of those bites can I generate in a given amount of time.
that's cool. Thanks for telling us that. I got 2 more questions for you. Did you ever have a mentor to show you along the way, or did you do it by yourself? And if you did, how did you do it?
Man, in that sense, a big part of it is like, people that really, the ones that stand out to me are ones that help me through the early parts of, starting to expand into the invitational, into the Bass Pro Tour, and 2 people have been pretty helpful for me, both Matt Becker and Randy Howell. And Randy, especially early on, when I was in the invitationals, was a big help in helping me connect with companies. Helping me understand tournament etiquette and how things are ran, what to expect. And understanding just the kind of process of going about navigating high level bass fishing, both from a business sense and from a fishing sense. And so having access to somebody like that is incredibly valuable. And Randy was one for me in a big way. And he's been a great influence. Still very connected with Randy. He's an awesome dude. Wish him best of luck on the Bassmaster Elite Series this year, since he's going back. But yeah, somebody like that is extremely valuable early on. I think it's absolutely, inarguably valuable to your fishing career to have a good mentor that has, some experience. It doesn't have to be a Randy Howell. It can be somebody that works for, a line company like Seagar. Let's say a Seagar employee that I know, he's my dad's golfing buddy, whatever. He's probably going to have a rich knowledge of some of the anglers in the field, some of the way that tournaments do their practices, how the industry works, how companies go about deciding who is valuable to them in terms of promotion and all these things like that. There's lots of people that have lots of really good opinions or angles when you look at how things work in the industry, or how things work both from the fishing side and the business side. And getting in contact with somebody like that is extremely, extremely valuable early on.
Yeah, I've had a lot of help from I've been pointing in the right from Josh Bertrand, and I have a
Josh is
buddy
good,
that lives next to my house. He took me on my first tournament when I was falling asleep in the back of the boat, and then now I'm out fishing him, and we have great times on the water. I see Josh a bunch of times at like the U.S. Open, and I've had a lot of help from like Mark Daniels Jr. and
Yep. Mark's awesome, dude. Both great guys. I respect Josh and Mark a lot. They've both been very welcoming to me as I've joined the Bass Pro Tour, and they're both guys I look up to, and having those people in place is extremely important.
yeah. And I've also had a lot of help from like Matty Wong and on the Elite Series side. He's a super cool guy. I fished with him as a co-angler in the U.S. Open.
Gotcha.
That was a super cool experience.
That's awesome, man. I really wish I got, a little bit more free time where I was able to go out west, because you guys have both, all three guys. Say Matty's from the west. I mean, technically from where I'm at, he could be as far west as he is east, to where he's from. But with like Josh and Mark both coming from the West Coast, there's so many of our top level anglers that come from the West. And it's clear that your fisheries out there are very good at creating both diverse anglers and anglers that are extremely proficient. And it's something that I definitely want to go experience at some point for sure.
Yeah, one you want to come to is the U.S. Open for sure. Lake Mojave. It's such a grinder, but big smallmouth, and you can see 40 feet down to the bottom.
That's incredible. That's super cool.
And I'm lucky enough to live only 3.5 hours away from there. And then I'm two hours away from Lake Mead, and then 2 hours away from Lake Powell.
Yeah. I think that's another thing that people probably don't get an aspect of out here. And I mean, I've not spent much, I've never been on a bass boat out west, and everything's so spread out. Like people say out west as if they can just put it all in one bucket from, Shasta all the way to whatever you name it, Havasu and all of your fisheries down in Arizona, New Mexico, whatever. And they think they can all just, we're gonna take Dorshak and Shasta and the Delta and Havasu and Mead, and we're all just gonna cram it in one bucket because it's all one thing when they're 14 hours apart or whatever. It's insane. Your guys' amount of travel that you have to do to be at tournaments is extremely intense.
Yeah. Like when I fished the high school national championship twice, first time at Hartwell, and it was 24 hours to get there.
Oh my gosh.
And then last year it was on Chickamauga, and if we drove, it was like 20 hours to get there from here, from southern Utah.
How realistically, how many miles do you think somebody could rack up on a vehicle driving from west to east for tournaments on a regular basis?
For like 3 tournaments back and forth, maybe 50,000 miles back and forth. But
that's incredible. I mean, my hat goes off to the guys like Brent Ayler and Skeet that go from out west and come all the way out here and go back and things like that. It's wild to both fish a major tournament trail out east, but live out in California or Arizona or wherever else. It's an incredible time investment. I'm sure there's probably a lot of both expenses and hurdles that a lot of us out east are just not familiar with, for sure. It takes next level dedication to be in it out there, because not only are you biting off all of the expense of bass fishing, but you're also biting off all of the responsibility and logistical nightmare that is the travel.
Yeah. It's cool about Ski. I caught a 5-pounder right in front of his house.
That is super cool.
Yeah. That was cool. Okay, I got one more question for you. Yeah. What was the scariest experience on the water for you?
That's a good question. I had one at Table Rock in the Toyota Series Championship with a gentleman out of California with me, and super cool guy. We ended up having a good day on the water after this point, but we had a little bit of a situation. We took off. It was foggy. It was the Toyota Championship, so there's 200 boats running around, and I was running down the lake and had another boat back and left of me that I didn't, because it was foggy, didn't realize they were there. And I don't know if they even realized I was there. and we're running probably 40 miles an hour or whatever. And I go to turn to steer clear of the shoal. And at that time, I think it became or became obvious to both me and that boat at the same time that both of us were there, and I don't think either of us realized each other were there. And so I turn, I turn a little bit like this to clear the shoal, and I look to my left, and there they are, and they start turning. And so, and the gentleman I had with me, he's just, it's 36 degrees. He's bundled up, just sitting here like this, looking down, and I go to turn the boat right, and I guess that change in left to right was enough, and he rolled, his shoulder hit the rub rail, and he rolled out.
Oh my
And yeah, 40 miles an hour, 36 degrees, skips a couple times across the water. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't good. And in my mind, I'm like, he's wearing a life jacket, PFD. He's prepared. Obviously, these tournaments require it. So I turn around. It was an auto inflate, and this is my PSA for auto inflate life jackets. They're great when fishing in cold weather. They're great when fishing in potentially turbulent conditions. I've seen them historically not be great at speed. At going off when there's a significant amount of impact. And I turned around, and his life jacket, which was armed appropriately, it was green, everything was good to go, did not go off. And so he was in the water, 36-degree water, covered in clothes, boots, what have you. And I had to hook around and go get him. And we got him in the boat, sat down, and I was like, dude, let's get you back to the ramp, go get dry clothes. And this dude's a gamer. So he was like, no, man, we're here to fish. And I was like, you are out of your mind. But I knew I had we talked about it. I had a puffy jacket, one of my hook cold front jackets in the compartment. I had another set of bibs. I had a sock hat or beanie, whatever you want to call it. And I had an extra pair of thick socks. And so I knew, like, realistically, if we got where we were going, we could get him out of those clothes and he could change. I was like, okay, you can change into these. And he's like, no, I want to be dry when I get there. So he sat there in soaking wet clothes while I ran for another 28 miles. And the dude just toughed it out. One of the most incredible things I've ever seen on the water. He sat there and I guess mind over mattered. The fact that it was 36 and we were going 30 miles an hour for 20 something miles. I went about as slow as I could go without being off pad. And it was the scariest experience I've ever had on the water. Cause like when he went over the side of the boat, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I turn around and there's just not a guy there?
Yeah. That's super scary.
It was incredible. But we got there. I caught 17 pounds, almost 17 pounds in 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And which was a great bag for that week on Table Rock. And so then we went into get him a limit mode, and we almost had him a limit. He got 5 bites and put 4 of them in the boat, but he ended up making a check. So, it was 60 degrees in the afternoon, so we knew it was going to get warm. He got dried out. He caught him 4 keepers and made a check. So, say all's well that ends well. I would have rather not had the experience, but it was pretty spooky, but it ended up being an all right day on the water.
Yeah, Table Rock's an awesome lake. I have a little cabin out there in Blue Eye, right?
Place is awesome.
Dude, every time I go out there, I just go look for spotted bass the whole time.
Yeah, dude, there are more 2-pound bass per every 100 yards in Table Rock than any other reservoir in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, they are freaking everywhere. You can't put your trolling motor down anywhere in the lake and troll for more than 100 yards and not see 2-pounders. They're everywhere. And it's spotted bass, largemouth, smallmouth, whatever you want to catch, it's in there.
Yeah, that place is so fun. You can do everything there. You can go fish deep, you can fish shallow, you can go flip docks.
It's other than grass fishing, it does have a lot of diversity for sure.
Awesome lake. Then you just go a couple miles down, and then there's another whole river system down there. And
yeah, it's extremely sprawling and spreads everybody out pretty good. So it's pretty good tournament fishery as well.
It's a big lake too.
For sure.
Yeah. It's big. Like Lake Mead's big too. Lake Mead's huge.
Yeah, its surface acreage is absolutely massive, right?
Yeah, it's giant. It's like, but I've gotten into it because I run a 19-footer because my garage is too small, but we're selling it right now. But I'm out there and it's blowing like 30 miles an hour. And I just look out into the main basin because I was in one of the it's called Overton. I'm all the way in the back of this, and it's like a 50-mile stretch. I'm in the back flipping bushes, and I'm like, oh shoot, it's blowing. So I'm running back, and I'm like, oh no. And I look out, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's like 6-footers everywhere just rolling around. I'm like, oh, this is
Gosh.
so fun. And then there's a thing called the Narrows, and it's like 6-footers from like everywhere coming at you from the sides because it's like just 2 cliffs. It's like you're going
Yeah.
through the Grand Canyon. It was so scary. And then
When you drop down in the trough and you look to your left and it's water, and you look to your right and it's water, and you're like, oh no.
yeah, and then it's blowing on top of that, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's like it was December, so it was super cold. I'm like, dude, this sucks.
Yeah. Did you spear one?
No, surprisingly,
That's good.
I did not spear a wave.
Granted, those are the conditions when they're that big. Those are the conditions where either you don't spear one or you just destroyed your entire boat. You
Yeah,
spear one wave and you're cooked.
yeah. I've had some times like that. Like on Mojave, I've been out there when it's blowing like 25, and then 5-footers, 4-footers everywhere. And Lake Havasu, we fished an ABA championship, me and my dad. And first day, it was blowing like 20, and there's 4-footers. And I was just like, this is stupid. So we just went through the London Bridge and went on the other side of the lake.
Yeah.
It was the first time I ran my new boat at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, dude, I'm not trying to break this thing right when I got it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's the part too that like when you get into bass fishing, it's never even something that like crosses your mind. You're just thinking about the fishing part, like beating
Yeah.
a bass. But oftentimes when you get to higher level tournaments or like national tournament trails, or you just have big fisheries around you, it becomes about being able to drive a boat just as much as it is about catching a bass.
Yeah. Learning how to run that big water is really important, especially if you have a co-angler with you. You don't want to
Yep.
beat up your co-angler too bad, or yourself, or knock one of your graphs off, or break your trolling motor,
For sure, man.
crack your hull. You just got to be careful out there
It,
sometimes.
it can get sketchy in a hurry, and the thing is bass fishing can be. You asked me if there was a time where I thought I'd quit. This just reminds me, the biggest time that I thought I don't want to do this was not related to bass fishing. It was related to waves. It was
Yeah,
the first time I was ever on Lake St. Clair. Incredible fishery, super big smallmouth, 1,000,000 3 and 4 pounders.
yeah,
My PB's from there, which is a 7, but that's kind of a freak for there.
yeah,
It's got a lot of 5 pounders, and it's got fair share of 6s, especially in the springtime. We were there in the spring, and it got rolling so bad everyone in the boat was seasick. My cousin was throwing up over the side of the boat. My dad was just trying to keep his bearings. I was up there sitting on the front deck, like just sitting on the deck, throwing my 3/4 ounce tube as far as I could throw it and just snatching it sitting down, and everyone was worn out. It was probably, high 4-footers, big seas. And at that point, I was like, there's no way this is for me. I cannot take this. I
it's
can't do it. Because once or twice a year, I'm going to end up in junk like this, and I don't want to deal with it.
yeah,
And thankfully, with time, I've gotten better at driving big water and dealing with it, and kind of getting over it. But that was the biggest time that I remember going, I can't. I'm over it. I can't do this.
yeah,
Was wave related. It wasn't even fishing related.
yeah. I used to live in California, so I learned how to read water from a young age and read the waves pretty good. So just driving a bass boat through the rush water is already a little bit natural to me.
Yeah, I know. I got a lot of early experience. My closest lake's Kentucky Lake. And as far as our fisheries east of the Mississippi goes, east of the Mississippi River, there's probably not a single reservoir that gets as big as Kentucky Lake does.
Yeah,
And because it's 180 miles long, but 70 miles of it is a drag strip, meaning wind can go down it for that distance and really not have a break. There's a couple bridges, but there's at least a 22-mile section that's wide open, nothing, no breaks, no turns. Then there's another section that's about 20 to 25 miles the same way, and there's another section that's about 15 to 20 the same way, and that place gets gnarly because on the TVA you get current. You get some pretty significant generation that goes on at those dams, and so you'll get some substantial current. And when you get a current that's or a wind that's bucking the current, it's pretty gnarly. And the waves get tight and tall, and they're pretty tough to drive. So I had the same experience on Kentucky Lake where I was like, this is horrible. I hate this. I never want to do this again. But after a little bit of time, if you learn how to deal with it, running rough water, reasonably rough water, meaning realistically from bottom to top, you should never be in a bass boat in a wave bigger than 5 feet. Ever, ever, ever. And anything bigger than 2.5 is inconvenient, extremely inconvenient bass boat, and is dangerous for sure.
Yeah.
Anything past 5, you're rolling the dice for sure on whether you're gonna break all your crap, tear off all your graphs, lose all your rods, just all together, potentially sink the boat, crack your hull, crack your transom.
Yeah.
But if you can work yourself in, running 1.5 waves, running 2-footers up to 3-footers, and just kind of get comfortable running waves that you're probably not going to kill yourself running, but spend some time intentionally running in it. It doesn't take long to kind of get your feel for how to trim, what to do with the gas pedal when you're on a crest versus a trough, and you just got to put yourself in those conditions reasonably, and make sure, and if you're in those conditions, batten the hatches, have everything strapped down, everything locked down, all your bolts tightened, all your screws tightened, have your life jacket on, kill switch on, make sure everybody's in a space in the boat where they can hold on to something, and treat it wisely, but put yourself in those conditions at times to make sure you know how to run it when it counts. Because the first time you're running in really rough conditions, you don't want it to be in a tournament, because then you're going to get stressed out. You're going to be watching the clock. You're going to be probably pushing it harder than you need to, and you're either going to hurt yourself, someone in the boat, or the boat itself. So the best time to learn is on your own time when you're fun fishing, but occasionally pick a time to go out there when it's blowing 20, blowing 30, and take it on, because it's the best way to learn.
Yeah, I learned how to do it in behind wake boats, just go in the wake boat way.
I'm sure that's true. We've got one out here, Lake of the Ozarks. That's a tremendous party boat lake, and it's something that it'll get unfishable because of the bluff walls and the concrete that's in the lake. It'll get unfishable with party boats, but party boats are a great way to learn it too, because yes, it's a wake being generated by a boat, but when you have wind, oftentimes that wind is generating a wave, and all the waves are going to be moving in the same direction, spaced fairly similarly apart, just like a wake would be. So it's a good way to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for being on here, Drew. It was awesome to have you on here, bro.
I've had a good time. I appreciate you asking me to be on, and I wish you all the best with this podcast, man. You've been awesome to work with. You're somebody that definitely has a love for it, and is somebody that I think for years to come is going to be a great influence for the sport of bass fishing, and that's more of what we need in the sport. There's awful lot of people trying to get attention, trying to get clicks, and try to generate buzz by potentially slandering the sport. And you're just trying to highlight people and highlight their stories and bring those to light. And I think that's something that's super awesome that you should be applauded for sure. And I wish you, again, all the best.
Thank you, Drew.
Appreciate it.
Have a good day, buddy.
You as well.